I was a little bit surprised that Nico
Iamaleava
was available for interviews yesterday, true freshman, and that's typically not the type of guys that Josh Heupel likes to trot out there. But this is now year 3 in Heupel's transformation of the program, so he wants to make those guys available, and he'd be well suited to do that so they're comfortable speaking in public. They're very different. Nico younger, and I think really focused on the task at hand, where Joe Milton, you would expect, is more comfortable. I also think he's not like Hendon Hooker. I think he's a great leader, but I think he's more along the lines of kind of a happy-go-lucky guy, and I don't mean that to sound like an insult. So just ask you this. Who was the more impressive of the two quarterbacks at the podium? Was it Joe Milton III or Nico
Iamaleava?
Who are you taking, Caleb?
I'm not trying to be biased because I'm the one who wrote about him, but I'm taking Joe Milton III. And the biggest reason I'm taking Milton, and it wasn't that Nico Iamaleava wasn't impressive. It was that you saw with Joe Milton III a level of consistency of, I don't want to give myself credit for what, I don't want to talk about my failures of the past, but I don't want to give myself credit for the past either. So he was consistently like, I don't want to talk about the Orange Bowl. I'm moving on. That game is, let it be. It happened.
It's 3 months ago.
3 months ago. And he was awesome in that game. And he doesn't want to talk about it. He's thinking forward. And, I know of some people, and I know you do too, Dave, who when you talk about their past, they'll say, I only talk about the positives. And as if
the future.
Exactly. And they only say they want to talk about the future when you're asking about the negatives of their past. But you ask about the positives of their past, they're more than willing to talk about it. But Joe Milton was very clear that none of that matters now. It's new year, new team, everything.
I'm going to say Nico because he is an 18, 19-year-old kid, and he is suddenly thrust in front of this podium, and we're still in this gray area. We don't know what to think about NIL. Largely rumored and believed that he got $8 million to come to Tennessee. He was asked about that. He basically dismissed it and said, next question. Now, you're not going to be able to play that next question card for a long time. And I'm sure it was Jimmy Himes who asked the question, we look forward to him working with us in the very near future. But you can't play that card over and over. You can't just dismiss questions. So, and I'm sure that most reporters I wouldn't appreciate that for an 18-year-old guy to just say a next question. So I thought that was a little big-headed of him, but he didn't really know what to say. I think Tennessee Sports Information Department could have coached him up a little bit better. It's pretty easy to say when somebody says, the NIL, does that increase expectations? Here's the easy answer. I mean, this is PR 101. The expectations for my play are always incredibly high. Nothing really changes that. I want to go out and be the best I can for my teammates. I want to go out and be the best I can for the University of Tennessee. These fans mean too much to me and my family to not go out there and have high expectations. Boom. It's like I've been in a press conference before. I mean, how awesome would that be, Caleb? Somebody came out and just said that.
No, what'd be more awesome is if he said, yeah, I got $8 million, but I'm going to play hard for it. That would be the best part of it.
If he said, I got $8 million and I'm mailing it in this offseason, and I'm going to go get $8 million from somebody else pretty quick. I mean, no, if you're going to make him available, coach him up a little bit.
Well, the thing is, Tennessee's they're not great. This comes from the top. And I love Josh Heupel, and he speaks to the media all the time. And one of the things, before I go to this point, I got to give Josh Heupel credit. Letting freshmen talk to the media. I'm sorry, I've dealt with way too many coaches that are so cagey that won't even let their seniors talk to the media on certain times.
Sure.
And so you got to give Josh Heupel a lot of credit for that. I think Josh Heupel himself struggles when he speaks at times. Remember last year when he was asked about the Jimmy Banks situation, and he really did. He did not give a straight answer. He didn't stutter or anything, but he definitely fumbled the response. He was just like, yeah, we just have expectations in our program, yada, yada, yada. And so I think that it comes from the top, not being able to deal with tough questions with that.
Okay, but let me argue that point. A little pushback here. I think Josh Heupel, and I hate it, does a masterful job of answering questions by not answering questions.
Well, he was trying to cover and protect Jeremy Banks in that response, but he basically admitted what we all knew about Jeremy Banks in that response.
Yeah, but as a whole,
so you might as well just say Jeremy Banks fault Hendon Hooker that week.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think he wants things going on. He doesn't want things out that are going on in the locker room. I don't think they show a lot. I've talked to a couple of high school coaches that have been there for the coaches clinic that they have around spring. They're not showing anything. They're not showing anything to the media. So I think that's his mantra. And let's face it. I mean, I think they're overly paranoid. And I think Heupel is to some extent because of what went down at Oklahoma. And I think they feel like they're on the front edge of something and they don't want to give anything away. And I think that's the mindset. So I actually think he's really good. Again, I hate it, but I think he's really good at not answering, but answering at the same time. I get nothing out of his 10-minute press conference that he does weekly. Zero.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how, from a media perspective, we like it because by not answering the Jeremy Banks question, we got our answer. By the way he answered it, we got our answer, even if he didn't directly answer. I'm just saying, I don't know if that was his intent. Now, I will say that's better than saying Jeremy Banks fell on a helmet.
True, which Jones did,
and then going out on lashing out at the media, saying what do we want from our media, and
Well, I don't think he blatantly lies, and I also don't think, from all of my knowledge, that he tries to placate the media or tries to air quote work with them. I don't think he does any of that stuff. I just think he's straightforward and he's not going to tell you some of the things you want to know. But I respect and understand that. I don't have a major problem with that.
No, I don't have an issue with it. I wasn't saying I have an issue. I was just saying that I think it's I think the way he answered that is why Nico you could see him fumbling a question like this one. I mean, look, if it were me, I'd be in so much trouble but this is just because I'm a media guy on the other end, so I do like to be direct. But I would just be straight up. I made $8 million, and there's a lot of pressure, but I'm going to try to live up to it. But
I wouldn't have him available. I thought he did a great job as an 18-year-old, and they wanted to trot out some freshmen throughout, and they did so earlier with the defensive players, and then Nico. And I thought it was odd that they brought Joe Milton out, who's not a freshman, obviously, but it almost seemed like they wanted to make things look even. Listen, I think the competition is dead even. I didn't need to see Joe Milton out there to think that. But he doth that protest too much. They run Joe Milton out there the same day that freshmen are going to be out there. They not want Joe to have his feelings hurt. They not want it to look like Nico could win this thing. Am I being too conspiracy theorist here after 1 week of spring camp? Again, from everything I hear, he's going to push Joe Milton. I don't hear he's going to win the job, but he's going to push.
Well, and I would say that win or lose, that's the best thing for Joe Milton. I mean, if you're trying to make it to the NFL, don't you want to be pushed?
No, agreed. There are people there that think that Nico is perfect because he's good enough and he's explosive enough that he will push Joe Milton and be in the next Anthony Richardson.
I mean, you know the stories more than I do probably, but I do know the stories of Brandon Stewart pushing Peyton Manning. I think, didn't Peyton Manning purposely lock him out of the film room one year?
I've heard that. Don't know if that's true, but I definitely heard that. So I think they love what they've got in Nico right now.
No, I agree. I think there's going to be – where I break with you is even if Nico – even if it's close and even – I know a lot of people say go with Nico. He's a freshman. But I think there is a whole having the locker room. And I just think Joe has the locker room. It just seems like –
I totally agree.
I hear you talk to Cooper and Jacob Ward, and they just seem to love Joe Milton. They seem like they're ready to run through a brick wall for him the same way they were for Hendon Hooker. And I think it resonates with a lot of the team that Joe Milton loses his starting job and he stays. He says, I'm going to stay in this era of transfer portals where he could have gone anywhere. He says, I'm going to stay and develop behind Hendon Hooker, and I'll be ready for this job again when it comes.
110% agree. I would say this, though, that Cooper, Jacob, or whoever, they want to be winners first and foremost. So if Joe Milton were to throw 3 interceptions and Tennessee loses to Florida, I'm not speaking on their behalf, but I think most players would be like, let's give this Nico
Iamaleava
a shot. I think that's what would happen.
We've seen that, though. I mean, I'm with you, but I mean, I go back to 2005, where I know a lot of the players wanted to stick with Rick Clausen, and you cover that whole quarterback controversy with Rick and Eric Ainge.
That was a hot mess.
It was a mess. And Rick had one comeback win against LSU, and everybody loved him. But then they stuck with Rick the next 3 to 4 weeks, and the offense was horrid. And it had nothing to do with rotating quarterbacks, because Rick was in the whole time. Nick Saban was kind of right at LSU. He just couldn't consistently start in the SEC.
Well, the problem with that is the coaches wanted Eric Ainge, and the players wanted Rick Clausen.
But by that point, the coaches got fully behind Rick Clausen after the LSU game, after that LSU comeback, didn't they?
I don't know that they were ever fully behind. Well, when I say coaches, let's just call it who it is. Philip Fulmer is going to be a guy that's going to err on the side of talent. And neither one of us would argue that Eric Ainge wasn't immensely more talented than Rick Clausen, right?
Yes.
But I think at the end of the day, he wanted Eric Ainge to be the guy. He had decided, I don't know if there were any recruiting promises made, but I can just tell you that he erred on the side of talent.
But what I would go with is I can't believe I'm doing this. I think Fulmer may have been right. Because we watched Tennessee with Rick Clausen starting the whole game against Ole Miss, the whole game against Georgia, and the whole game against Alabama. I mean, that Alabama game was horrible. That 6-3 game, remember that? That's the worst game I think I've ever had to witness.
Now, I felt like that coaching staff lacked conviction. I think you should either just say, hey, we're going Ainge, we're going Clausen, and that's the way it's going to be. There was some flopping back and forth. I agree that Rick was limited, but his teammates loved him. So basically what you're talking about, Joe Milton would be the Rick Clausen this year, and Nico would be the Eric Ainge.
Yes. And even
you hope it doesn't play out that way, obviously,
right.
if you're a Tennessee fan, but that would be the comparison. And it's a weak comparison to some extent because, I mean, Joe Milton's about 100 times more physically gifted than Rick Clausen.
Oh, yeah. Joe Milton's got a cannon for an arm. He's also, I think you're going to see a little bit more of this year with Milton. You can see a lot of north-south. You can use Milton's legs more than you can use Hooker without fear of him getting hurt because he's so much bigger. He can withstand more punishment in the run game.